Meanwhile, a new report says President Trump is frustrated by the situation in Afghanistan. In a meeting last month, the president allegedly expressed his dismay towards the, quote, lack of progress in the nearly 16-year war. Trump also suggested firing the top U.S. commander in Afghanistan because, quote, the U.S. has lost ground there. Mark Jacobson is a senior fellow at Georgetown's Pell Center, former senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense Ash Carter, and a former deputy NATO representative in Afghanistan. And because he's also my brother, I can say he has a lot of titles out there, so he knows what he's doing.
Older or younger?
What do you think? Older. He's older.
Okay.
He's older.
Okay.
It would have been the right answer anyway. Mark, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, both of you, for having me today.
Mark, I know obviously serious topics that we want to discuss here, and one of the things is that I just mentioned a near 16-year war in Afghanistan. You actually have been over there, serving and also working under generals there in the past. Where are we now in this war in Afghanistan?
Unfortunately, we're not winning. With the way the situation is right now, I think you could make the argument that we're slowly losing. The Secretary of Defense made very clear that we're not making much progress. And, Secretary Mattis has spent a lot of time dealing with these issues. The problem is right now, decisions made by the Obama administration have put us where we are in a non-combat mission. In other words, we're enabling the Afghan forces to fight the war on their own. And so there's a little bit of frustration that the president has that, well, wait, why haven't we won yet? And so I think he's asking some of the right questions, but I think he's making some of the wrong conclusions already.
So would you say that that anger is justified by the president then?
I think that Afghanistan is frustrating. I'm not quite sure that President Trump deserves to be frustrated yet, frankly, because he hasn't even visited yet. This is someone who wants to get the advice of his generals. He has Secretary Mattis, he has General Dunford, he of course has General Nicholson in Afghanistan. I mean, these guys are the iron chefs of generals, to talk about Trump's restaurant analogy there. But he's not listening to what they're saying. They're telling him that they need guidance, they need a goal, they need an objective, and they need resources. And the Trump administration so far has failed to give them what they've asked for.
So, Mark, when you mentioned earlier that this is partially because of the Obama administration's failures, what do you think they should have done that could have changed where we are today in the war?
Back in 2009, the Obama administration did a very thorough review of the situation. General Stan McChrystal at the time came up with a strategy, a strategic concept for how to deal with things. But the Obama administration only really implemented half of that. The Obama administration authorized, correctly I think, a surge in military forces, a surge in troops, but it never coupled that with a surge in assets from the civilian side needed to help Afghanistan with its governance and its development. In other words, there was never a surge for the State Department, there was never a surge for the U.S. Agency for International Development, and that's the real center of gravity in Afghanistan. Development, economy, democratization, governance. Those are not things the military does. The military simply provides the security in which these other things could be done, and we never did enough.
But Mark, they also provide, training for forces there on the ground. And to this day, 16 years into this war, those soldiers are still not able to launch counterterrorism operations on their own. It's something we faced in Iraq, we faced in Afghanistan. How do you fix that?
All right, I disagree a little bit. It's inconsistent. So in other words, the Afghans are actually pretty good at counterterrorism. Their special operations units, their special police units are very good at counter-narcotics, but you correctly hit the problem that most of the Afghan army and a vast majority of the Afghan police can't handle the mission on their own. So how do you fix that? This is why I think we need a continued military presence to assist the Afghans with some of those higher-end military operations. For example, close air support, heliborne support to get their troops to places, and in those things we can enable the Afghans to get the job done while they're carrying the heavy load. But yes, I get the bigger picture. We have not done everything we needed to do, nor have the Afghans, when it comes to making sure they can operate independently.
You talked about sort of that, I guess, two-sided battle, the idea of it's the military, but then also the other issues that need to be faced. Hindsight's 20/20, so this administration knows that now. Look forward for this White House and what they maybe need to do. The president in this report reportedly was calling for the firing of General Nicholson. Is that part of the strategy going forward, or where do they need to go?
This is not about a general. And in fact, as I said, Mick Nicholson is one of the best generals we have out there. In fact, there are these rumors that General H.R. McMaster, currently the National Security Advisor, might go and replace Nicholson. H.R. McMaster's a good general, but he's not as good as Mick Nicholson, especially when it comes to Afghanistan. The problem is this, and if I had the president's ear for a few minutes, I'd say three things. Mr. President, first thing you need to do is understand that the military is simply a vehicle for the larger effort. Second, that larger effort is going to be USAID and State Department, so give them the budget they need. Stop gutting the State Department, stop gutting USAID, get them out in the field to do what they do best. And thirdly, understand that so much of this is on the Afghan government. This is on President Ghani. Get over to Afghanistan, sit down with Ghani, have a real discussion, do your negotiating thing, and come up with a plan. Order our generals to do it, and they will get it done.
Mark, you know, the president also reportedly compared the war in Afghanistan to renovation process in one of his favorite restaurants. Do you think that the commander-in-chief is taking this war in Afghanistan seriously?
I'm not sure, and I'm really disappointed to have to say that about the President of the United States. But I'm hoping that his new Chief of Staff, John Kelly, can make him understand how serious this is. I'm hoping he and General McMaster, Secretary Mattis can get to the President and say, look, you know, that horrible analogy aside, you're not going to see an end state like you would in the renovation of a restaurant. You're talking about enabling the Afghans to do something on their own, and that means the war with the Taliban could go on for years afterwards.
Mark, but isn't this a problem time and time again right now with this administration, with this White House, in that, yes, a lot of people wanted a White House that wasn't entrenched in Washington, D.C., but these are issues that have been there where some of that experience does matter.
Well, not only that, I think if you look at the base, if you look at the Bannon wing of the Trump support, they were about withdrawing from Afghanistan. And I think what you see in the president's, again, frustration, whether justified or not, is that he understands that a lot of people in the country think that, well, we've been there 17 years, we can't get it done. So what if you take a look at why we're there? I mean, don't forget, we're there because of 9/11. We went in there to make sure that Afghanistan couldn't be a safe haven for al-Qaeda yet again. That job isn't done. But I also think, let's go back to the Bush and Obama administrations. I also think they failed a bit too in not explaining to the American people that this would not be a cakewalk. It wouldn't be an easy war. It was going to be a 10, 15, 20-year struggle, which it's turning out to be.
Typical thing, sister that interrupts her brother.
I was going to say, Mama must be proud today, guys. Mama must be very proud.
Or she's sleeping right now. No. She had a long trip this week.
Either way, Mark Jacobson from Washington, we thank you so much for your insights.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.